From the heartland of America, focused on God, family, and country, the mouthpiece of the Midwest. This is Dale Carter's America.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Dale Carter's America. We are on the road at Funhouse Pizza in Lee's Summit, and we have a very special guest with us. Give it up for the next governor of the state of Missouri, Senator Bill Eigel.
All right. Let's go, Missouri. I feel like a rock star.
Senator, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Blessed to have you here.
Thrilled to be here.
You know, you and I met when you did the Lincoln Days deal in Kansas City up by the airport.
Yeah.
And I was the moderator of that. And I was supposed to be unbiased, ask the questions of you, and keep it all civil and all that. And I noticed as we were going through the questions between you and the three other opponents running for the Republican nomination, you're hitting it out of the park every time.
I do my best.
Every time. And I walked up to him afterwards and I said, I got to get you on the podcast because you are the conservative in this race and we've got to get you elected governor.
Right.
So there you go.
I like everything I'm hearing so far. This is great.
So for those who don't know Bill Eigel, because, you know, Ashcroft's got the name in the thing, Kehoe's the lieutenant governor, and then we got the other guy driving his truck around the state. Maybe folks don't know you as well. So who are you?
Yeah, well, I tell you what, before my time in politics, just a little bit about my background. I'm a military veteran. I'm part of 4 generations of Eigels that have served in the military. My grandfather, going all the way back to World War II, was a cook for the U.S. Army. My father was a pilot, served. There you go. He got to
tune that out.
I know, you got to tune that out. He flew C-130s and KC-135s. He was active in the Vietnam War.
Right.
Both my wife Amanda and I were aircraft maintenance officers, did assignments around the country. In fact, our last assignment was at Whiteman Air Force Base, right outside of Kansas City here. Fun fact about me, at one point or another, every single B-2 stealth bomber in the American inventory was managed for maintenance by either my wife Amanda or I. So fun fact. And then a few months ago, my son Kevin, my only son, signed up to be the newest sailor in the United States Navy. So for Christmas, he got me a T-shirt that said Navy Dad on it. As an Air Force guy myself, I don't know how to feel about it, but you know, we're excited. So
you know, it's a family of service.
Yes, as a matter of fact, so this is actually really breaking news that the other member of our family. So you have my wife and Amanda and I, which are both Air Force veterans. My son, who is a Navy sailor. My daughter, who just graduated high school a couple of weeks ago, just decided to enroll in the ROTC training program for the Air Force, where she's going to college. So every member of my family is looking at military service. Every single member of my family. So it's a big part of my background. We moved in 2007. In 2007, my wife and I got out of the service, moved back to St. Charles, where she is from, and bought a little business. We bought a little remodeling business. We did skylights, so residential, commercial skylights. I like to joke that I made a living cutting holes in people's roofs, and did that for about 10 years, and didn't want anything to do with politics. I avoided politics. I didn't want anything to do with government, because government, if you're a small business owner and you touch government either wants more of your money, or government's telling you what you can't do with your own property.
Right.
So I didn't want anything to do with government until about the 2014, 2015 timeframe, when we had this thing called Obamacare. And remember Obamacare?
I do, very well.
Your rates were going to go down, and
keep your doctor.
You're going to keep your doctor, and everything's going to be it's going to be free to put millions of Americans onto free government health insurance. None of that was true, and my premiums for my small business went up 70% year over year. And after having a kind of a temper tantrum down at the mailbox, I went home and told my wife we got to find a way to get involved, and started coming to events like this, meeting legislators, asking questions. I was always kind of the guy in the back of the room asking questions. You know, there's always one in every crowd, right? There may be one here tonight. That was me. I was doing that. I was really trying to get into the minds of these elected officials who seem to be promising all the right things in campaign season, and that led me to run for the office of state senator, which I've been serving in the past 8 years, and I've kind of become. There's probably nobody down in Jefferson City that makes the swamp, that status quo, more uncomfortable than I do.
Yeah.
And so here we are today, and we've got to make a decision on August 6th about what direction our state's going to go. Are we going to continue with kind of the same old, go along, get along mentality from Republicans where we're falling behind the other big red states like Florida and Texas or Tennessee? Or are we going to elect a bold conservative leader that's going to kick over those apple carts down in Jefferson City and starting to do the big red things that the other states are going to be envious of and follow our lead for once?
Well, that's what we want, right?
That's what we want. That's what I want. That's what I'm talking about.
When I set this up, I wanted to ask you. It's like you've got Florida, you've got Tennessee, you've got Texas, you've got my home state of Indiana, which is a red state, good red state. North of us, you've got Iowa that's kicking our ass. You've got Arkansas that's kicking our ass with things like school choice and conservative things, conservative principles. And I wonder about this because, we elected Eric Greitens as governor, and I thought Eric, I don't know what you think of him, but I thought he was a good, solid conservative. And obviously he exploded, self-destructed, and we got
Supernova.
We got Mike Parson, who's a nice guy, served well as a sheriff and all that, but it feels like we're not that red state. We're not that conservative state. And so when I hear you talking about the things you want to do, it's like, yes, I'm on board.
Yeah, I mean, when I think in the last time we had a competitive Republican gubernatorial primary, the things that I'm talking about, disrupting that status quo, getting in there, accomplishing the big red policy ideas, cutting the tax burden, getting our finances under control, all of these things are the things that folks keep asking for every 2 years on the first Tuesday in November. Eric Greitens came in, and yes, that went supernova, but it led to a Mike Parson administration that has doubled the size of government. Government's never bigger than it's never been as big as it is right now. And if you look at the budget when I got in, which was $27 billion, now it's $52 billion. And so the folks down there in Jefferson City are completely disconnected with what folks in the real world of Missouri are actually struggling with. Here in Kansas City, we've got assessments on our properties are up 35% year over year, 35%.
We know about that in Jackson County, don't we?
I mean, it's just out of control. We saw personal property tax bills go up 20% last year. So your car is worth 20% more. I don't remember getting that deal with the last time I traded my vehicle in, but that's what government is telling us. And the Bidenomic recession that we've been in for 4 years has been great for government. Government's never had more of your money adjusted for inflation. So I'm coming in the door saying, listen, there's this bold Missouri out there that I think you might be interested in and I'm going to give you 4 main things that I think go into this Missouri. One, if we want to compete with the Texases and Tennessees and Floridas, we're getting rid of personal property tax, folks.
How about that?
We're getting rid of personal property tax, right? If you'd like to see an end to being charged rent on your car, I'm the only candidate for governor in either party that's talking about getting rid of personal property tax. I'm the only one. 29 of the states have already gotten rid of personal property tax on their vehicles. To put in perspective what that means, personal property tax revenues statewide are about $1.7 billion a year, $1.7 billion a year. But we've increased spending in Jefferson City over the past 6 years by $25 billion. So the next time, I get a lot of questions, how are you going to pay for it? Listen, none of the problems in the state have anything to do with not enough of your cash going to government somewhere. So what we're lacking is a visionary leader that's willing to go in and cut the spending down in Jefferson City, keep our local areas whole when they no longer are able to charge you rent on your car every December 1st, and take our state place along the other side, the other big red states. And by the way, when we're done with personal property tax, we're going after income taxes.
Yes.
You want to know what, the difference between Missouri and those other big red states is they don't have personal property tax. They don't have income taxes. I was actually, during my time in the Senate, I actually got sponsored and passed House Bill 2540 in my second year in the Senate, which actually reduced the income tax rate in this state by 0.5%. That's great. But we got to go down to zero. If we don't get down to zero, we're not going to compete with Tennessee right across the border. We're not going to compete with Texas and Florida. And to get there, we're going to have to cut spending. So that's a big part of my agenda. We'll talk about that more. So that's the first plank is tax reform.
Sure.
Second plank is going to be we're going to deport the illegals in this state. All right, every single one. We've got. It's estimated that we've got about 70,000 illegal immigrants in the state of Missouri right now. And actually, the cost of those illegal immigrants on the taxpayers of the state is actually greater than the value of all the personal property tax bills that we collect in the first place. So this is not only allowing folks into the state illegally, but it's assisting in the continuation of the human trafficking trade, the fentanyl trade that's coming through our soft on crime regimes in Kansas City and St. Louis, and we're going to put a stop to it. I'm going to only one. On my first day, I'm going to declare this for exactly what it is, an invasion under Article 4 of the Missouri Constitution, and that's going to empower the National Guard, the Highway Patrol, and every sheriff in this state to detain and deport every single one of the illegals that have come into this state illegally and continue to be in our communities. So that's item 2. Item 3, we're going to protect the farmland in this state. How many, I got a question, this is a question for the audience.
Sure.
How many acres of Missouri farmland should we sell to foreign countries? No. 0. I mean, it's really amazing to me that there are actually people in Jefferson City that get this question wrong. There are people in this gubernatorial primary that continue to get this question wrong. And by the way, of course we should not sell any of our land to China. That'd be like selling our land to the Soviet Union back in the 1980s. But I'm going to make the case that Missouri ought to be owned by Missourians, or at least Americans, because nobody cares about your food supply as much as you do. So I'm the only candidate in this race that is not only going to stop even one more acre from being sold to foreign entities. We're going to follow the lead of Arkansas. We're going to get every single square inch that we've lost to these foreign countries back into American hands, because we want it to be owned by Missourians.
Yeah.
And then finally, let's talk a little education. And I know we're going to get a lot of questions about these, but
Sure.
I'm just giving you the broad. Education. Y'all here pay property taxes. How many of you are thrilled about what's being taught in our public schools right now? No. The CRT, DEI, transgender nonsense, which is being shoved down on our public schools from the Federal Department of Education. It goes through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and it is foisted onto our local public schools, who are spending their time teaching this nonsense instead of reading, writing, arithmetic. I'm going to be the governor that's not only going to commit to you right now that in my first budget, we will line out every single dollar coming from the Federal Department of Education. We will dismantle the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in Jefferson City, and we will free our schools up to get back to teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, not this craziness that some kids can change that which God himself has ordained, their gender. So we're going to protect our kids, and we're going to be bold about it. So
it's awesome. That's a great first 4 steps here. Let me ask you about this, because we talked about this in the forum that we were at. Most of Missouri is a rock red state,
Yep.
and then you've got 2 blue cities on either side, and they are crime-infested cities.
Yeah.
What, as governor, first of all, the police department in Kansas City is overseen by the Missouri legislature.
Yeah.
It's the only police department I know of that is, and that goes back to the gangster days.
Yep.
What can you as governor do about the crime problem that we're having in our cities?
So I'm going to give you a short-term and a long-term answer. The short-term answer is we need to increase the law enforcement presence on the highways leading into and out of every one of these urban areas. So the governor has direct control over the highway patrol. Right as I take office, we're going to triple the highway patrol presence on the highways leading into and out of the cities. And actually, you mentioned Eric Greitens. Eric Greitens actually in 2017 did this. He had a special task force set up that activated a special unit of the Highway Patrol in St. Louis on those highways. They were putting thousands of individuals in jail who were breaking the law and using those highways as conduits. My person came in and he put a stop to it. So I'm going to reactivate that. That's going to be the short-term solution. The long-term solution is that really the problem we have is that we just have these regimes in Kansas City and St. Louis that don't want to put bad guys in jail. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And there's no nice guying our way to the fix here, right? There's no diplomacy that needs to be done with Quentin Lucas. There's no diplomacy that needs to be done with Tashara Jones in St. Louis. You know how much money those jurisdictions get from the state?
No.
A lot.
Okay.
And there's one person that's empowered at the state level to not only recommend the state budget, but has line item veto authority of the state budget, withhold authority over the budget, and controls every one of the state departments that actually spend all that money. And the next time Quentin Lucas doesn't want to put bad guys in jail, doesn't want to support the police in his area, he's going to get a call from Governor Eigel, who's going to tell him, you either protect your citizens or I'm cutting off the money. That's going to get him in line really darn quick.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say one other thing.
Yeah.
I'll say one other thing. This is a Kansas City-based issue. You know, we have an officer right now, Eric DeValconaire, that's in jail right now.
We do.
He shouldn't be in jail right now, and I want you to know that in my first week as being the governor of this state, we're going to pardon him and send him home. The only thing that he's guilty of, is defending his partner who had a weapon drawn on him from a suspect. And even though it's a tragic story, the reality is this is how you know I mean what I say about supporting our police. The idea that this has been allowed to go on so long with a Republican governor that could actually interrupt this meeting right here today and fix this wrong, but hasn't done it, is frustrating. I'm going to fix it the moment I get into office.
Yeah, absolutely. Round of applause for that. The Surgeon General today came out and said we have a gun problem in this country, and every politician, we talk about it on our podcast all the time. It's like we've got to have another gun law to fix this. And our view is, you got to punish people who misuse a gun.
Yeah.
You got to put them in jail.
Yeah.
And what happens in Kansas City, I'm sure it happens in St. Louis, is they arrest the bad guy, and before you know it, the bad guy's back out on the street.
That's right.
Reoffending.
Yeah, I have never, certainly I've never called for more gun laws as a way to fix the problem. I'm going to be honest, I heard this once and I agree with it. Blaming guns for violence is like blaming forks for obesity. All right? That's what it's like. And if you go after the people that are committing these crimes, if you put bad guys in jail, then you're going to keep your community safe. So what we actually just need are the state to step in whether it's St. Louis City or Kansas City doesn't want to defend the rights of their citizens, and we need a Jefferson City that's ready to take action. And unfortunately, we haven't had that. And a lot of the times I get a question, why doesn't Mike Parson do what I just described, right? Why doesn't he increase the highway patrol presence? Why doesn't he call Quentin Lucas and say, if you don't straighten up, we're going to cut off some money? Why doesn't he do that, right? Because there's a temptation to think that I'm just creating these things that I would do but not really do it. But the answer to that question of why he's not doing is actually kind of interesting. We talk about these budgets growing down in Jefferson City every year. They're bigger than they ever have before. Well, guess what? Guys like me don't vote for those budgets. I've been voting against these budgets every single year for as long as I've been in the Senate. And there's a group of about 8 to 10 conservative Republicans that don't vote for those budgets either. They're known as the Freedom Caucus in general, but they don't vote for all this wasteful spending, which means that Governor Parson has to get the support from the Democrats to pass these budgets. And you can't turn around and go after Quentin Lucas or Tashara Jones and all of those Democrats that you looked for support to pass these budgets in the first place by saying that, whoa, now I'm going to hold you accountable for all this crime and criminal activity. Can't do that. But he's been compromised because he's working too closely with the Democrats to secure all this wasteful spending in the first place. I'm going to go in there on day one and change that dynamic. I'm going to count from the most conservative senator to the 18th Republican, and we're going to pass a budget that reflects a fiscally conservative Missouri. And that's going to keep me free to look those Democrats right in the eye and tell them, if you don't protect your citizens, the state will, and the money will stop. So that is what we're missing in office right now, and it explains why we have this center-left coalition that's really protected the status quo in Jefferson City.
You like what you're hearing? Yeah. Wow. Well, let me give you a local issue that may not be a governor issue, but it's important to some of the people in this room because we talk about it on the podcast a lot. We live in eastern Jackson County, all right? We don't like being part of the Kansas City coalition. Yeah. So what we've tried to do is divorce ourselves, much like St. Louis County did from St. Louis. Yep. Exactly. Yep. In 1876. And Jeff Coleman has been working with me on this. We're trying to do it the right way. Yep. What do you think about that possibility of setting up another county, and we would call it Truman County? Harry Truman's buried here, right? All right. So why not? And that might get some Democrats to come on board.
Yeah, right? Okay.
I mean, you're into bold leadership. That's what we want, is bold leadership out here. Yeah. We don't want to be part of Kansas City anymore. Yeah. They can have the city and all of its problems, and we'll take eastern Jackson County and set up our own deal.
Yeah, listen, if that's what the people out here want, certainly I'm not going to stand in the way of that. I mean, Kansas City right now,
is a mess.
So we talk about St. Louis City being a mess, right? We've known that. They've been that way for a generation, but Kansas City is now in the top 20 for violent crime, right? For criminal activity. So Kansas City is now climbing the rankings too. So I acknowledge exactly what you're saying, and I can tell you, if I were a resident of this area, I would be saying the same exact thing. So if that comes to fruition, and that's the direction you all want to go, then I want you to know I'm going to support that.
Well, I can tell you, we've starved them of their money, because the first thing they came at us with...
That's what they love the most.
Exactly. After the property tax debacle you're talking about, which was horrible in Jackson County, they came with an internet use tax. Now, I get that, I understand that, because it evens the playing field, between brick and mortar businesses and online businesses. But we in Eastern Jackson County said no more money.
Yeah.
And it failed because of Eastern Jackson County.
Yeah.
And then the Chiefs and Royals came at us and said, we want to continue that tax.
Yeah.
And the city passed it, and we said no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God bless you all.
So maybe they'll kick us out at some point, because as a coalition in Eastern Jackson County, we are saying no more taxes.
Yeah, and listen, I appreciate that. I think that, thank goodness, we've got Eastern Jackson County that is kind of holding the line against Kansas City. But just imagine if we had a regime and administration in Jefferson City that was putting enough pressure on the bad behavior that's going on in Western Jackson County that you didn't feel such a need to get away from it, right? Imagine that future. I 100% respect the fact that with as bad as things are and the lack of engagement that we're seeing from Jefferson City, that the answer seems pretty appealing to just separate yourself from that. I'm going to provide a Missouri where we're not tolerating, whether you're separate or not, we're not going to tolerate this nonsense going on from the city, Kansas City or St. Louis City. I mean, look at what silliness and what insanity is being allowed to go on. Y'all have heard about these drag queen shows, right? I mean, we had Quentin Lucas was allowing this to go on. How does this happen, right? We have right now these drag queen shows. It's already against the law to expose these kids to this kind of nonsense coming out of the city. It's already against the law. We don't need another law. We don't need another rule. We need a governor that the next time a child is led into a performance like that isn't going to go to the legislature and ask for another law. We need a governor that's going to go send in the highway patrol and arrest every single person on site for exposing these kids to that nonsense. So expect a lot of engagement from me on this and other issues. So whether you're separate or not, we're going to hold the feet to the fire of these regimes in the urban areas.
Well, that's a little different than the San Francisco mayoral debate that I saw over the weekend. I don't know if you saw any of the video from that, but the current mayor of San Francisco was excoriating one of her opponents because that person couldn't name any drag queens. Can you name a drag queen?
Nope. Never even tried. Never even tried.
Well, let's throw another one out there, because some of us who live in Eastern Jackson County work in Kansas City,
Yep.
and this happens in St. Louis too, and I believe it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
They take 1%
Yeah.
of our earnings,
Yep.
and we don't get to vote on it.
So this is early on in my career in the Missouri Senate. I filed and carried the legislation that would have eliminated the earnings tax in both St. Louis City and Kansas City. This idea that everybody in the state but Kansas City and St. Louis City have a protection from local income taxes is crazy. I mean, just because you live over a certain geographic line in our state, you get a special protection from local income taxes that not folks in Kansas City and St. Louis. That's crazy. And by the way, this is just one more example that these regimes have too much money. St. Louis City, I don't know what the statistics are for Kansas City, but St. Louis City spends $3 for every $1 that St. Charles County, where I'm from, plus the 5 largest municipalities in St. Charles spent, 3 to 1. Even though St. Louis City has more than 140,000 less people in it. So I can't figure out what they're spending all this money on. They're not spending it on the police. In fact, we're seeing welfare programs leak into the police budgets now as a way to silently defund our cops and our officers out there. And as this is going on, the only higher authority is the state. What is the state doing? They're doing nothing. What's required for evil to triumph?
Do nothing.
Good men to do nothing.
Yeah.
So we have seen too many of these go along, get along, do nothing Republicans. That's going to end on August 6th.
All right. So what do you love about Missouri, and why do you want to be governor?
Well, I tell you, Missouri is probably one of the most beautiful states I've been in. I've raised a family here. We have strong Midwestern values. It's not only a great place to raise a family, but I've also been successful here owning and running a business. As I told you, my daughter just graduated high school a couple weeks ago. She has a 4.0 GPA, and she's beautiful. She got both of those things from my wife, right? But I know that she's going to be successful whatever she does, right? Wherever she goes, whatever she does, she's going to be very successful. I'd sure like to have her find that success here in Missouri. right? I'd like her to find, not going to Tennessee and Texas or Florida, nothing against those states. I'd like her to find that, God willing, if she's going to have a family, why not Missouri, right? This is a great place to be. We're the centrally located in the country. We have access to some of the biggest rivers in the country. We could be a distribution center for the rest of the country. Why do I want to be the governor of this state? It's because I think we're missing an opportunity for Missouri to be that leader amongst the 50 United States. When we turn on our TV and we see all these other states, you mentioned Arkansas, you mentioned Iowa. Look at the state of Louisiana right now. Their new governor, Jeff Landry, he just passed a bill to make it a state level crime for people to be there illegally. They passed a bill to put the 10 Commandments back in the schools and down there, right? They passed a bill that is going to actually consider castration for those that commit sexual crimes against kids. All right? Listen, I'm proud of these states for doing these things, but that could be Missouri. And I feel like we are being robbed of the future that the Missourians are asking for every 2 years on that first Tuesday in November. We're being robbed of that, and we're being robbed by a bunch of career politicians that don't care about what we're going through down there. And I'm a pariah down in Jefferson City because I don't have a problem saying so. Not only do I have not a problem saying so, I've been naming the names of all the bad actor Republicans down there, and I'm going to keep on doing it. And pretty soon, I'm going to be taking every one of these bullets and slings and arrows on behalf of every one of the 6 million Missouris that are living here, because I think Missouri ought to do a heck of a lot better. And this Missouri I'm talking about, it's worth it me coming in front of you, asking for your vote and asking for your support, because I'm willing to bet there's a lot of folks here with children and possibly some grandchildren out there that they'd love to see raise a family and run a business here in the Show Me State.
Well, that's the performance I saw at the forum, and that's why he's the only one we've invited on the podcast. This is my guy for governor of Missouri. I think you'll do a fantastic job. And I think the more people hear you, the thing you've got to overcome is name recognition.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story about name recognition, right? Because I remember when I first started this a couple years ago, the swamp, the status quo down there in Jefferson City said, Eigel can't win that. They couldn't imagine a guy like me. They couldn't imagine a group of folks like this. So literally changing the world. We had, the first thing you ever come is this name ID of Jay Ashcroft. And I remember when I first ran for state senate back in 2016. I'd never run for office before. And I was running in a race against a sitting state rep who wanted to also be the state senator. Her last name was Zare. In St. Charles County, where I come from, Zare is one of the most well-known last names that you could possibly have. The name Zare is so well-known. It's so common throughout St. Charles County that my wife's maiden name is Zare. All right? My wife's maiden name was Zare. It was great. We had her parents wear shirts that said Zare's for Eigel. It's fantastic. And I tell you, in spite of all that name ID and the familiarity with the word Zare, I went around and I was telling people about how I was willing to go down to Jefferson City and fight for the things that they typically only hear about in Jefferson City. I thought at the time that I was going to be fighting with Democrats, not Republicans. But I was promising to do that. And even when it became hard to do that when I got into office, I stayed the course and became exactly who I promised to be. And even though that name ID, and by the way, my opponent spent more than $500,000 against me, which is a lot of money for a state Senate race. After 27,000 votes were cast in that race, I won by 400 votes. So never believe what the swamp wants to tell you. And then of course, we were told that name ID was going to play a big role in this race. You know who had name ID in the gubernatorial primary in 2016? It wasn't Eric Greitens. It was Pete Kinder. Right?
Yes.
Pete Kinder,
right, I remember.
Was the sitting lieutenant governor,
right.
Had been the only statewide office holder for, I think, 3 terms, if I'm not mistaken. And out of 4 candidates, what place did he come in? 4th. He came in 4th place. For the top jobs in this state, the governor's position, the 2 U.S. senators, more than the last name, people want to know what you're going to do for the state. And we've seen Jay Ashcroft. When we took the first poll in this 2 years ago, Jay Ashcroft was at 57%. 57%. It was like an incumbent, right? Nobody had imagined, and everybody couldn't imagine. Wow, well, how could anybody beat someone that's at 57%? You know where he is today in the poll that just came out last week?
No, where?
22%.
Hello.
All right, and the reason is because last name is not enough to win the governor's mansion. Now then we were also told that the money from my other opponent, Mike Kehoe, was going to be incredibly powerful. How can you beat name and money, right? Well, we have that which they don't. Message. A vision of a better tomorrow and a willingness to do what's difficult to make that reality become true. There's this guy that you may have heard of that was really good at articulating a vision. His name was Ronald Reagan. He was known as the great communicator, right? There you go, there you go, there you go. You smell hippies, I love it, right? Ronald Reagan was not only good at articulating conservative principles, but why conservative principles in particular were so good for the country, not just for Republicans, but for independents and Democrats too, right? And he was able to describe a vision of a better America that built some of the greatest coalitions that we honestly haven't seen in this country since. Now, the swamp and the status quo is a lot bigger than it was back in 1980, right? The country is more fractured, it's more divided. So you know what else we need with a little bit of Ronald Reagan? We need a little bit of Donald Trump, right? All right, so you take some Ronald Reagan and you mix in some Donald Trump and a little bit of disruptor and willingness to get into the minds and apple carts of those folks down in Washington, D.C. and Jefferson City, and that's a powerful combination. So my message that we can get to this future Missouri is so much powerful than Mike Kehoe that he is now, as I sit before you, he has spent $6 million. $6 million he has put out on TV, on billboards, and he hasn't even eclipsed where Ashcroft is at. So I would be terrified if I had spent $6 million. I haven't spent a dime yet, by the way, because our ads just started today. And we're within single digits of the lead. So Don't believe what the swamp is desperate to tell you, that this Missouri, you can't get to it. A guy like Eigel can't win. A group of patriots like this can't win. That you're better off staying home. You're better off just complying with the candidates that they want to see in there, not what you want to see. We're following the same path that Eric Greitens followed, and on August 6th, nobody's going to be more surprised than all those swamp creatures down in Jefferson City.
All right. Well, we want that red state. We look around and we see what they're doing in the other states, and it's like, why can't Missouri be like that? Yep. And you've just laid out how it's going to happen.
That's right.
I'm proud of you.
Yep.
And glad that you're on the
go
podcast.
Missouri.
Hey, before we get to questions from the audience, do you want to weigh in on the presidential thing at all? We've got a big debate coming up Thursday night. I know Biden's got 16 people trying to tell him what to say. Trump's out on the stump.
I mean...
Are you going to watch?
Of course I'm going to watch. I mean, it's almost unfair to Joe Biden. I mean, they put him in there with Donald Trump. What a great night. I mean, I can't wait. What's Joe Biden going to say? What's he going to point to? I don't know what kind of medicine they're going to put him on before they put him up on stage, but it's going to have to be something special.
Yeah.
So I think, Donald Trump is winning the country right now on this message of being a disruptor of the powerful, the disruptor of the status quo. Joe Biden is the physical embodiment of the status quo. Of a disconnected Washington, D.C. leadership team that wouldn't recognize middle America if they landed on it from a spaceship. So I'm looking forward to that, but really I'm looking forward to November when we're not just going to be taking our state back, we're going to be taking our country back. And I'm looking forward to working with Donald J. Trump to make sure all of the things that we're promising in campaign season are part of the America and the Missouri that we're moving towards.
I went back to the, give him a round of applause here. I went back to the '84 campaign for Reagan, and the spots that he ran were Morning in America.
Yep.
And after 4 years after Jimmy Carter, no relation, by the way, America had really improved, and he was able to run spots about it's Morning in America again. Yeah. And if Joe Biden could do that, he would do that. But it's not Morning in America.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. Soon to be. And a lot of times, I know there are a lot of folks out there that are very frustrated right now. I mean, even as excited as we are, whether it's about Donald Trump's campaign or my campaign, there's a lot of folks that are disillusioned, they're disappointed, they're frustrated, they're angry. Right here in Missouri, they're angry with these do-nothing Republican supermajorities. My message to them is, you're not alone. I can't stress that enough. You're not alone. I have traveled this state. I have put 70 to 80,000 miles on my truck over the past 2 years, meeting tens of thousands of these Missourians who are sick and tired of being just nothing more than a flyover state because of the politicians in Jefferson City that couldn't care less about what they're going through. I want you to know you're not alone. And I want you to also know that we're not afraid of this message coming out of the Jefferson City elitist types that say you can't have that Missouri, even though you've been showing up every 2 years demanding it from your leadership. And I can't That's right. Let's go Mo. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of the message coming out of Jefferson City. Don't feel like you're alone. You are not alone. And on August 6th, we are going to stand up, millions of us, all together and do something the swamp can never imagine. Let's go Missouri.
It's going to be awesome. All right. The TV commercial that he mentioned, which is really good, it's going to be on this podcast. So make sure that when we put this out, when's it coming out, Kurt?
Tomorrow.
Okay, tomorrow the podcast will come out, and about this point in the podcast, you'll see the Bill Eigel for Governor commercial, and it's fantastic.
Washington calls us backwards. They look down on us. Well, Washington can get bent. I'm Bill Eigel. Here in Missouri, we believe in boys and girls, not its, theys, or thems. We worship God, not abortion. We cling to guns, not government. And we know where illegal immigrants belong. The hell out of here. I'm Bill Eigel. As governor, I'll always fight Washington, because that's how we save Missouri.
Hey, we also want to thank and really, if you've got a question, we've got a microphone right over here. Scott, you want to go stand by it so they know where you're going. Line up over here, and we'll ask you to give us your name, maybe what town you live in, and whatever question you have. But first, we want to thank our podcast sponsors. First of all, Bob Watson, my State Farm agent. He's been a State Farm agent for 50 years. He's at 816-229-7878, Auto Home Life. He'll take care of you. Royal Roofing and Solar, they put the roof on my house. They also do solar, and that can save you a lot of money. If your Evergy bill is going through the roof, you won't want to miss out on this. At least have the conversation with them. Royal Roofing and Solar, 816-540-7057. How about the home of the live broadcast, Funhouse Pizza, Jim Dingman? How was the pizza? Pretty good? All right. We thank them for that. Michael Schroer is here. Our real estate agent. You looking to buy or sell? He's right here. 35 years of residential and commercial construction experience. Michael Schroer, real estate professional with RE/MAX Heritage. I saw Dr. Mark Taramina. He's right over here. Have you had your colonoscopy? You're 46.
That escalated quickly.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Hey, 45 is the new 50. All right, 45 is the new 50. And that's the guy who can take care of it. I mean, he runs it up Republicans and Democrats.
I can't even make eye contact with him right now.
He'll take care of you.
Shifting uncontrollably on my seat.
Midwest GI Health and Wellness. They're at 816-836-2200 right here in Lee's Summit.
Tremendous people.
And of course, Kirk Doris and Lori Hocker, they are at Medicare Simplified KC. I'm closer to this than you are. 10,000 people a day turning 65 in this country, and you know this better than I do. Medicare is not a simple thing. Very complicated, and they help you get through it. One size fits all is not what Medicare is about. 816-701-6661 on the web at MedicareSimplifiedKC.com. All these fine people bring you this podcast, so please give them a tremendous round of applause. We thank them. Thank you very much. All right. To the questions we go. Sir, who are you?
My name's Carl from Independence.
All right.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Carl.
All right, before we get to reality, let's have a pleasant moment. Imagine the policies of Donald Trump with the eloquence of Ronald Reagan. Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Oh, have to talk.
Was there a question in there? Or?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
It was a good moment to start with.
I'm getting there. Takes me a while.
All right.
All right. Right now, the state preempts all gun laws. And we've seen Kansas City trying to get around that.
Yeah.
There is an out-of-state group that is putting a lot of money in to try to put a constitutional amendment to change that. And there was a bill in the House and Senate this year that would change the policies and procedures to do a constitutional amendments.
Initiative petition, yep.
Yes. What happened?
So the initiative petition process, so right now we have a very low standard to change the Constitution using the initiative petition process in the state of Missouri. It requires signatures in 6 of the 8 congressional districts, and just a simple majority vote. You compare that to changing the federal constitution, where you have to get a supermajority of the states and concurrence from both chambers of the Congress, a much higher standard, and for good reason that it's a higher standard beyond just a simple majority. You don't want urban areas running up the numbers in St. Louis and Kansas City and being able to change the foundational document of the state. So Republicans for the past 2 years have been trying to increase the threshold of changing the Constitution using the initiative petition process. What we specifically wanted to change it to was something called a concurrent majority, where you not only have to get a majority, a simple majority overall on the ballot, but 5 of the 8 congressional districts would also have to approve any initiative petition before it would go into effect. What that means is you would have to have a much broader coalition of not just the urban areas of the state, but a consensus among urban, suburban, and rural areas of the state if we were going to change our founding document. It was a good way to protect it. And,
sure.
In light of right now, we have the abortionists that are trying to put abortion into the Constitution right now, all the way to birth it. This was a big priority for the past 2 years in the legislature. The Freedom Caucus was at the kind of the forefront of pushing and making people uncomfortable and really pushing this bill through the Senate, pushing it through the House, and then trying to take one final vote to approve over in the Senate to get this in front of the people. But unfortunately, for the second straight year, it was like Groundhog Day, because our Republican leadership and some of the softest Republicans in the entire building worked together to derail that and prevent it from getting to a vote of the people. And on the very last day, on the second to last day of session, unfortunately, Republicans caved in the face of the Democrats who were filibustering this particular bill, and were unable to muster 18 out of 24 Republicans to shut off debate. We couldn't get even 3/4 of Republicans to support the #1 Republican priority. And the reason that this happened is because we have way too many rhinos down there. I think that the slogan for 2024 outside of campaigns ought to be, don't feed the rhinos. We have plenty of Republicans in Jefferson City. We have more than enough Republicans. We need the right type of Republicans. And while I was out there working with the conservatives to get this passed in the Missouri Senate, we didn't see any engagement or air cover from our statewide officials. Governor Parson has said nothing on this issue for 2 years. You know why the Republican Party is fractured? It's because our senior most leadership are either calling on Republicans to do Republican things like raise the gas tax, or when we need them the most to lead on issues of importance like initiative petition reform, they don't say anything. So I'm going to bring the Republican Party back together by being the leader of policy that we've been missing for the past 6 years. I'm going to be calling them to deport the illegals, to get rid of personal property tax, to get rid of income taxes in this state, to cut the budget, to defend the children in our schools. And when we do, we're going to get the Missouri that other states, I want 2 years from now, some other state somewhere around the country to be saying to groups just like this in their state, man, have you heard about what Bill Eigel's doing in Missouri?
Yeah.
That's what we want to be like. That's the Missouri I'm trying to get us to. So it was a Groundhog Day, but we've got too many rhinos. And I'll say one more thing about the rhinos. It's not that other states, I know I could have a lot of things I could say about the rhinos, but it's not that other states like Texas and Florida and Tennessee don't have rhinos. It's not that there aren't members of their legislature that are more moderate and, if given half an opportunity, will betray the Republican brand at the drop of the hat. The difference between Missouri and those other states is that Missouri is lacking that visionary, articulate leader that's able to identify those conservative policies and hold the feet of those legislators to the fire if they don't do what they promised to do in campaign season. We're going to change that on August 6th.
What might you do? What might a Governor Eigel do to students who are protesting and destroying state universities?
Yeah, we're going to do the same thing that we're going to do to these drag queen shows that are letting kids in. We're going to send in the highway patrol and arrest every single one of them. That's what we're going to do. These people ought to be in jail. They are not only stopping our college students from getting to class, they're destroying property. They're destroying your public property. Your tax dollars went into those campuses and universities. We have allowed these crazies to run rampant for far too long. I'm not going to have one iota of tolerance for any of these troublemakers or wannabe terrorists that are going onto our college campuses and running amok. We're going to put a stop to us. This isn't New York. This isn't California. This isn't Illinois, where we tolerate that silliness. We're putting a stop to it.
All right. Yes, ma'am. You are?
Tired. Pam Runyon, and I'm from Raytown. And I'm a registered Republican and have been for years, and voted for Reagan. That's how bad that goes. And what I don't understand is that I like Trump. I voted for him. I want him to. I would have wished none of that stuff would have happened. But since we've got so many people, you say his name and they just come unglued. And then you turn around and you say Biden, and the other half go unglued. Why have we not put somebody else running for both of those positions? Why are we repeating what we did 4 years ago?
Well, so I don't pretend to speak on behalf of the entire American public, but let's talk a little bit about. But but I'll try. Let's talk a little bit about the Republican primary. I actually happen to think that the top two candidates for the Republican presidential nomination each represented different yet very attractive policy positions. The first, of course, is Donald Trump. And what was Donald Trump's message? Donald Trump's message, I believe, very succinctly and at a very basic level was he is going to be the reckoning for the D.C. swamp, that when the campaign ends, he's going to have your back when they come for you. That was his message. Agree with it, disagree with it, that's what his message was. Good message. Ron DeSantis, also one of our best, if not the best governor in America right now, comes from Florida. His message was also good. His message was, look what all the good things I'm doing in Florida, and if you elect me president, I'll do them for you as the president. Great message, right? Look where the country is right now. Look where the country is right now. We've just gotten through the 2020 election, the COVID crazy environment, the Obamacare debacle. We have had so much government inflicted upon us, so many of our rights trampled upon, so many of these nut jobs over in Washington, D.C. that are coming after our guns, they're coming after our families, they're coming after our property, they're coming after our tax dollars, and they're letting in the door people from around the world that want to kill us. The reason that Donald Trump got picked by Republicans is because more than anything else, even before we can get to that next step of making our country stronger, there must be a reckoning for all of those that have betrayed us and subjected us to this nonsense going on for the past 4 years. That is why Donald Trump, I believe in my heart of hearts, not that his message was, I'm not even going to argue whether or not his message was better or worse than Ron DeSantis. I'm just saying that the country must have a reckoning for all the wrongs that have been committed by government. And the American public decided that Donald J. Trump was the guy to do that. So now, I happen to think that Ron DeSantis and his message of moving forward from that reckoning is also going to continue to be attractive, and I think that others are going to try to emulate that particular message moving forward. But right now, the swamp of Washington, D.C. is so powerful, so fat on your tax dollars, so drunk on your power, that only a disruptor is going to be able to do that. If there were more big disruptors in the Republican field, I think they may have been able to challenge Donald Trump, but there just weren't. I tell you, my big message to you, consider when you can think about my message for the state of Missouri, I'm offering both. We're going to not only be a disruptor of this status quo, but we are going to do all the big red things that all too often get promised and forgotten as soon as campaign season is over. I'm going to disrupt Jefferson City by taking away all their money, and I'm going to funnel it back to you by not requiring you to pay personal property taxes or income taxes. And Missouri is going to be better for it. And when we raise up leaders in all of our states, no matter how disappointed you are in Washington, D.C., remember, none of the solutions we need are going to come from D.C., no matter who's in charge up there, right? None of our problems. So focus on the state level, focus on the sovereignty and getting back the sovereignty of the state. Whether it's Joe Biden or any other troublemaker up there, we're going to say no to them whenever and wherever they come at us.
You know, I've always believed that politics is best practice closest to the problem, you know, so, and the elections that don't get the turnout, like city council and mayor, those are really important elections. Yeah. Governor is a really important election. Yep. The presidency, all right. You are?
Hi, I'm Camille, and I'm from Blue Springs.
My adopted hometown.
Yeah, we might live kind of close to each other. So when we talked last, it was a few months ago, you have been talking about personal property taxes.
Right.
And I meant to ask you a little bit more about that before we left, and I totally forgot. So I come from a couple of different states where instead of paying low fees for our tags, they're super, super high. And so when I moved here, obviously there's a difference. So a lot of those states don't have personal property tax, but you pay it on your car tags instead. So I got to thinking, okay, so if we get rid of personal property tax, are we going to see that happen where that money or those fees just get diverted to car tags instead? And how are you planning on...
So in other words, if we get rid of personal property tax, is a part of the plan to just stab you in the back somewhere else with tax burden elsewhere?
Yes.
No. In fact, I get variations of this question. The most common variation of this question is, how are you going to pay for it if you get rid of personal property tax? That's the most one that I get. Or more directly, what are you going to replace it with, right? I'm not going to replace it. You're not going to just pay another tax. So to put in perspective where Missouri stands right now, we spend twice per person what the state of Florida spends on their citizens. Twice per person. We spend twice per person what Tennessee is spending right now. We spend twice per person what Texas is spending right now. And so the problem is not that there's not enough of your cash going to government somewhere. The problem is the government of Missouri, which include all the local areas, are just taking too much from you and doing a poor job getting it to where it needs to go. My commitment to you fundamentally is that I'm going to cut government in Jefferson City. Remember, it's grown by $25 billion. When we get rid of all the waste in Jefferson City, we cut our government in half in Jefferson City, we're going to be able to get rid of personal property tax at the local level, keep the local governments whole from the surpluses we will develop in Jefferson City, right? Not increasing the burden on you somewhere else, just doing a much better job of actually spending the dollars coming out of Jefferson City. Then we're gonna have so much money left over that we're gonna be able to get rid of income tax as well. So, and then when I describe that, folks think about that and they say, can you really do that? Can you really get rid of personal property tax and income tax and still be able to pay for all the things that most every rational person believes that we ought to have, like police and fire? Yes, those other big red states are doing it. And because they've already figured this secret out, that's why people are moving to those states, right? So it's a sea change for folks to say, wow, I didn't realize that the tax burden was just so heavy on us that we could actually get something like that done. Yes, the tax burden is so heavy on you. That's why, in general, no one's moving to Missouri. That's why that's happening, because the burden is so much lighter in the other states that's where all the growth goes. The conversation about getting rid of personal property tax is not a conversation about whether or not we can and should fund those local services that most every rational person, regardless of party, believes that we ought to, like fire, police, and schools. It is a conversation about whether or not we should fund those local services by charging you rent for the car that you own every December 1st. Most other states, 29 other states, have already figured out that the answer is no. Under an Eigel administration, we're going to be the 30th.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Young lady, step up to that microphone and tell us who you are.
I'm Marilyn Feaster. I'm from
Marilyn?
Lee Summit.
Okay.
And at one time, I was employed by the Missouri State House of Representatives.
Oh, okay.
For 5 years.
Okay.
One of my pet peeves back then, and it's still a pet peeve today, and it's a way of saving money on the budget, and that is clean bills.
Cleaning
Because
bills.
All of these perks that are inserted into bills.
Oh, yeah.
Christmas trees.
Christmas trees, yes. Multi-subject
I saw it
bills.
when I worked there, and I still see it today. And I'm thinking, if we could get rid of all the nonsense, stupid things.
Yeah.
Like
You've
at the
mentioned the line
national
item
level,
veto quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish. Go ahead.
No, I was saying at the national level, I remember one thing they had in the budget was studying the sex life of shrimp.
Yeah.
Well, that's really important, isn't it?
Do they have sex? I really don't know. Did you find out?
Seahorses, I understand, are pretty exciting. but-
Really, and I know that our elected officials fight it. They
Yep.
don't want to do that because they have their own little
That's right.
Yeah.
that they want. But what can we do to get rid of it?
So I'm going to kind of set up the conversation and the answer here. So the question is about multi-subject bills, where you have these big omnibus bills that get passed at the end of session when none of the senators or representatives have actually read the entire bill and are voting them through in the rush to get things done. You ever hear, beware the elected official that says to you, hey, I want to get things done, right? Mike Kehoe's actually saying that out there. What do you want to get done? Well, We have one of the longest regular sessions anywhere in the country of any state legislature, and yet, how many of you know that of a 4.5 month session, 80% of all the bills are passed in the last 2 weeks? And what happens is when you wait all the way to the end, you have to violate the single subject clause of the Constitution by passing bills that have all sorts of different things in them, right? And this is a terrible practice. I will tell you that, believe it or not, you remember when I said that the Republican leadership killed the initiative petition reform bill this year, right? At the end, they killed this with 6 days to go in session. You know what they didn't get away scot-free from that decision. I extracted a price from them. And the price that I extracted from them is that we killed every single omnibus bill for the final 2 weeks, and we didn't have not one multi-subject bill come to the Senate floor in those final 2 weeks. That, believe it or not, has never happened in Missouri history. So the problem, of course, is I can only do so much as a senator that's kind of operating in a conservative minority down in the Missouri Senate chamber. We've got to take this to the next level. So what are we going to do? Well, it's pretty simple. I'm not going to sign multi-subject bills. We're going to actually require the legislature to pass individual bills with a single subject. And it'll only take vetoing a few of their bills before they get the idea. So it's something that's well overdue. One of my colleagues, Mike Moon, actually talks about this at length. He's very good on this subject. And I think it's about time that we do a lot better vetting of the bills that are coming out of the legislature.
I worked in house perfecting,
Okay.
so I know about the bills.
All righty. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks. Up next, who do we have?
My name is Reagan Breen. I'm from Independence, and
I love your shirt.
Thank you.
Great shirt. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. I want to know what your opinion is on requiring women to sign up for the draft.
The great question. So I don't support that.
Interesting.
No, I don't support women being signed up for the draft. I'm a traditional guy. I think that this has historically been something that has been our society has called on men to do that. That being said, I'm supportive of women serving in any of our military branches. But no, I like the draft right where it is. And if we find ourselves in a national situation where we're going to be in a global conflict, I think that we'll be calling upon the young men of this country to fight that war. I knew a lot as you know, my wife was a military veteran. She served in the United States Air Force. And believe me, she got way more awards than I did. All right, so this doesn't speak to anything necessarily on capability, not at all. But I think that's I don't think that I'm not supportive of calling women in the draft for military service.
All right, thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
We're going to take one more question. By the way, my wife's in the back, and she's from Cass County. And if we go to war, you want her on the front lines.
Okay, we're drafting her?
Yeah.
Your husband just offered to draft you. I mean, that's
You know,
wow.
this is the podcast, so we can say anything we want, but she's fond of telling me there would be nothing left but shit and toenails.
All right. All right.
I sleep with one eye open. Okay, one more question. You are?
My name's Rita Olson Stawicki, and unfortunately, I live in Kansas City. Are you familiar with the Detective Eric DeValcanair case?
Yes.
We talked about that.
We did talk about that.
Okay, it was hard to hear you.
That's okay. I know that's okay.
Where do you stand on a pardon for Eric?
In my first week in office, I will pardon Eric DeValcanair, and he'll be back home with his family.
Thank you.
All right. So, listen, I have said this. The story behind it. By the way, this is a tragic story. Nobody's celebrating this story. We never want to see anybody get hurt, and I think that's felt most acutely by the police officers that are being called into literally the line of fire every single day.
Police officer with Kansas City, Missouri Police Department.
Yes, thank you for your service. But you have a lot of politicians that use this as kind of a political football. And when you really have an opportunity to stand by their officers, and I said this earlier, the only thing that Officer DeValcanair is guilty of is defending his partner. That's it. And
Saved Troy's life that day.
And his partner testified in court that he believed that he saved his life. So the fact that this man has been in prison for a year is outrageous. And
Parsons on this.
he's, unfortunately, Mike Parson is at the same place that he is at on a lot of issues that we need to address from the governor's office, and that is that he's absent. So you have my commitment. I actually spoke to Sarah, his wife, directly before I made this public statement that we were going to get him home with a full pardon in my first week of being in office.
His dad was my partner in the early 80s, and I've seen Eric grow up. I know what kind of man he is, and I know what kind of officer he is.
Yep. Well, thank you for your service, and we're
Absolutely.
going to get him home.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Mark, do you want to ask the last question? I mean, you're paying for this podcast, so...
I know, yes. We can't say no.
Yeah.
We can't say no.
Well...
And I've got the Frank White recall petition back on my table in case anybody's not signed it yet. I just happen to have them with me.
I gather, Mark, that our candidate for governor is 46 and has not had a colonoscopy yet, so do your cell job.
When did it become 40?
45.
45?
I'm not going to address that.
Okay.
But I do have a question. I live in Lee Summit.
Okay.
And I've been in practice in Eastern Jackson County since 1985. Mm-hmm. And I've had nurse practitioners in my practice since 1985. And you know, being in Jeff City, you've probably been lobbied heavily by the nurse practitioners for what's called independent practice. Independent practice is where they can practice independently as a provider with no physician supervision. So as a background, you know, after college, we go to medical school for 4 years. We do training for 3 years. My specialty now is another 3 years. Nurse practitioners have a nursing school for 4 years, and they do nurse practitioner studying for 3 years. Some of these schools are online, by the way, the nurse practitioners. Mm-hmm. And they want independent practice. They want to practice with no physician supervision. And I want to know what your stand is on that in Missouri. You know, there's other states that have independent practice. I want to know what your stand is for independent practice of nurse practitioners in Missouri.
So there's a very similar conversation, and I know that a lot of doctors do not support independent practice, and I don't think the conversation takes anything away from our doctors, who are always going to be our most qualified individuals to provide medical care for anybody that's suffering from any kind of illness or ailment. I would say that especially in our rural areas, which are losing population right now, it's very difficult to find the availability from a doctor. We're seeing a lot of our doctors, and I think I'm telling you something you already know, have moving closer to the cities and simply aren't able to provide that level of supervision that you're talking about. That I think that ideally we would all agree that you'd have a doctor and you know in every square tenth of an acre in this state, but we don't have that.
As well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so recently we've waived, because of statutory requirements, waived the geographic requirement of a physician being within 60 miles of the nurse practitioner. So they could be, so I can supervise a nurse practitioner in Cape Girardeau, St. Louis, up in Kirksville. And with the telehealth that we have today, with the technology, there's no reason that a physician can't supervise a nurse practitioner down in Hayti, Missouri, in the Boot Hill versus anywhere. Mm-hmm. So
you've already begun loosening these standards already.
So yeah, and that's because of technology and because of lobbying. Because these rules were made initially. The geographic rules were made initially in 1995 when this technology was not available. Mm-hmm. So now with the advent of the technology we have today, we can supervise anywhere around the world, actually. So I just want you to be aware that we see a lot of issues with independent practice with minimal experience.
Right.
So I just want to let you know that.
No, I think that this conversation is going to be more pressing for as long as our rural areas are continuing to lose those populations. So we're going to continue to try to find ways around that. I think you would probably agree there probably are some things that nurse practitioners are qualified to do, even in the absence of even direct supervision. You've already mentioned that there is. So, I think we can move down that path and try to find what the sweet spot is. Do I think that we're going to ever have a day where nurse practitioners just no longer have any relationship with the doctors of the state? Probably not. As we kind of move towards that, we're actually treating the symptom of the problem here, right? We're not actually treating the problem. The problem is the loss of population in all these rural areas is causing a real dearth of a profession, doctors, that are kind of rare anyway, right? So we're not actually treating that particular problem by giving more independent practice. We're just treating the symptom. So in this case, I think we got to treat the problem and get all of Missouri growing again, including all those rural areas that are losing the population in the first place. And if suddenly those rural areas start growing again, my guess is that you're not going to have this problem of a lack of doctors. And by the way, you could take doctors out of that statement and sub in all sorts of different career fields and highly specialized career fields that the rural areas are also lacking, and looking for different ways to kind of overcome the loss of those populations. So I really think that Better Missouri, not that we're not going to continue to look at these kind of things and try to give the nurse practitioners or whomever more flexibility, but I think a stronger Missouri is one where all of our communities are growing and it actually lifting all the boats and all the tides in every one of these communities, so they don't have this problem that they have to deal with in the first place.
There you go. All right, sir. You're off the hook.
Woohoo!
Thank you for being part of Dale Carter's America. Yep. The next governor of the state of Missouri, Bill Eigel. August 6th, you got to get out and vote. And until next week, this is Dale Carter's America.
The views expressed on Dale Carter's America are Dale's and Kurt Wheeler's. They do not necessarily reflect the views of KFKF or Steel City Media. Comments can be sent to dalecartersamerica@gmail.com. Check back for weekly episodes. Subscribe, spread the word, and give us a 5-star review. Thanks for being a part of Dale Carter's America.